like I said, we go. There's no, we got lots of editing facilities and an editor on hand as well.
Awesome.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, thank you, and welcome to Mandisa Buthelezi, who is joining me today on our Welcome to My House podcast. A brief introduction to Mandisa, who is the legal counsel for client agreements and legal services for the AEM region at Hatch. I'm very keen to get to know Hatch a little bit better, as well as yourself. So first of all, welcome, Mandisa. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me. I'm quite excited about this, actually.
Excellent, excellent. Well, our first, as you know, and any listeners will need to know, our first interaction came at the very, very beginning of the lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic here in South Africa. Oh, I should just point out as well that you're in Johannesburg and I'm here in Cape Town.
I am.
In fact,
and I should have just waited for this recording, because
if you were here, I could have had you round to my house for a cup of tea. But
if I knew that you're in the Cape, we could have done this on Friday. But anyway,
next time,
it's fine.
For sure,
next time.
But yes, and you kindly took part in a little interview collections of best term to use that we did called the 5 in 5. It's an invention that we thought up very quickly, but we thought, right, it's a really pivotal moment in the law, not just in South Africa, well, for the legal market, should we say, rather than the actual laws. Not just in South Africa, but across the African continent as well. And we thought, right, let's try and speak to leaders in the field, in-house practice, up-and-coming, young, ambitious lawyers, really find out how they are adapting and pivoting in the midst of, as you'll remember, what was happening kind of live right there. One day the courts were open, the next day the courts were shut, So it was really great into you get your thoughts on that. And what we'll do is we'll go through some of that and really see whether some of your predictions came true, I suppose. But like I say, thanks for joining me. And to kickstart, I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey and maybe you can add a bit of I and anyone can read on. Are you originally from Joburg?
I'm originally born and bred in Joburg. I'm a city girl at heart. I I can't imagine myself living anywhere else, really. But yeah, I'm a Johannesburg girl. Essentially, I went to just a brief background. I just went to Dominican convent in primary. In high school, I went to Macaulay House, and I think the law bug probably hit me in my final year of school. So I decided to just take a chance and apply at Wits University. I thought at the time I'd probably be more of a BCom LLB kind of girl. So I actually applied for both the LLB and the BCom LLB, which I was accepted for both. But I think in my first week of doing a BCom LLB, I realized I'm not the girl for a BCom LLB. And I switched to an LLB, which I did for 4 years at Wits. I think that's a quick overview.
Purely for my own interest, what did you see was the main difference then? What did you, in the BCom law and the LLB, what really
Rob.
made you be able to tell after a week
I think I sat in a tax class, and I just thought to myself, what is going on? But I obviously thought, it's just an adjustment from high school to university. And then I went to a business commercial class, I believe it was, and I was just so lost throughout that conversation with the lecturer. And I just thought, you know what, let me just stick to my guns and do what I really like to do, which is just a plain LLB with no maths, with no commerce or anything like that. And I'm glad I realized it as quickly as I did, because a lot of my other peers only realized that probably 2 or 3 years later when they had to just switch and they thought, geesh, We should have actually just started with an LLB. And I think what I also realized when I was doing the plain LLB is that we had a few classes. We had English literature as an elective, and I think we also had African literature. And since I love reading, I realized that, you know, this is actually a better option for me, whereas the BCom LLB guys couldn't have that option of literature, which helps you so much with your legal analysis as well as your legal writing. So I think those two classes were quite vital, and I'm glad I took the LLB option.
Yeah, and also, whilst literature angle will help you with your legal studies, it's also
Yeah,
quite interesting. A nice
it
break
is.
away from, yeah. Oh, no.
It is. Yeah, we had some interesting books that we didn't cover in high school. And I think a lot of people, when they attended those classes, they felt that, why am I sitting in an English class when I can be practicing law, right? But you actually realize maybe in the second year how vital it is. Literature just takes you through the process of writing, and it's so important as a lawyer to have that skill. Not all of us are great at it, obviously, but it does guide you and put you in the right direction whenever you have to write an opinion, which is going to be quite valuable when you're practicing, especially if you're going to be in a law firm, unlike me, who's a corporate lawyer. When a client asks you to draft an opinion, you know how to structure that opinion. And I think that particular class, African literature and English literature, helped me when I was drafting opinions in my practicing days on how to actually structure it. And it sounds simple, right? Introduction, just the middle part, and then conclusion. But actually, the literature portion explains how you need to open up your introduction and how you need to close it off, and not just close it off, but close it off well. And I think that is quite vital. I did an opinion about 2 weeks ago for one of our project managers, and they're quite blown away as to how I just broke it down and I made it so simple to read, because obviously I work for an engineering consulting company, and engineers don't want to be sitting and reading an
Yeah.
opinion of 4 pages. They would really want a one pager that breaks down the issues. And I remember just thinking to
Well,
myself,
really, what they
geez,
want is
that
a
English
bullet
class,
point.
yeah, they want a bullet point. I mean, I think I think as I was writing it, I was just thinking, make sure that it does not exceed 1 page. And when he got it, he thought to himself, geez, this is exactly what I need in my life. And he said to me, this is the best opinion he's read. It cut straight to the issues. I think I only used probably two case studies, and he was just so, it was practical, which is what engineers also want. Um, so it definitely was very succinct, and that's what he needed. And I think without all of those teachings from law school, specifically those literature classes, I probably would not have that skill, or at least I wouldn't be as good as I am at it. Probably, yeah.
Well, that's really good and really interesting as well, because we, from a number of reasons. Firstly, because I've done a lot of podcasts where actually and the teachings within school get a bit of a bashing from some of our guests in terms of what they don't teach.
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear someone talk about what they do teach, and that it's stuck. That skill you learned has stuck with you until this day. So, and also from a secondary perspective, is that at GRM we do a lot of talks with the universities here in South Africa. Well, once a year we go to all the law schools and we
Yep.
do a bit of a career talk. Now, obviously, since COVID, online, but normally
Yep.
in normal times we would actually go to the law school and sit in the lecture theatre. And
Mm.
you'll remember from back when you were a law student, we're normally faced by these faces and these eyes wide open of like, please tell me what to do. What am
Yeah.
I doing? Can I switch
Yeah.
courses? How do I
Yeah.
get articles? What's going on? You know, and so anybody who's going to be listening to this podcast as a student, the fact that you made that switch and that you didn't look back, that may end up helping someone. So thanks for highlighting that. What I was going to Yes, please tell me more about your story. So when you left Wits, you went to, I'm guessing you started your articles. Hold on a second, Mandisa, you're on mute. Can you? Yeah, no, I'm still getting you muted. It's still got a cross through it. I don't know why you suddenly went mute. It says mic off. I still can't understand whether it would be easy if you took your headphone out or. No, it still says mute. I don't understand why. Hmm. What to suggest, because we were just getting into it and I still can't hear you. It's cross through it. Oh no, here we go. Talk again. How strange. Every time you started talking.
That's weird. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, how weird.
Cool. That's so
Well,
weird.
there's definitely going to be some editing.
A lot of editing. I guess my earphones decided to just take a break from all this talking. But
They
yes,
were like, nah,
sorry.
too much.
Too much.
Well,
Too
cool.
much. Yes. Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, too much. Please don't worry. I'll ask again, and then we can, like I say, we can edit it in.
Yeah.
So once you left university, you graduated from Wits, fantastic university that it is, and you went, and I'm guessing you went to start working to get your, right?
Well, I applied at a lot of places to get my articles and I was quite unsuccessful, unfortunately. So I ended up sitting at home for about 8 months or 9 months. And then I applied for an internship at SAA, which is the South African Airways. It was a legal internship for a year. So I thought, let me give it a shot because I can't sit at home any longer. So I gave that a shot. I did it from September to December. And then one day I just decided, let me just try again to apply for articles for January of the following year. And lo and behold, probably 3 weeks later, I secured articles and I had to resign from SAA after 3 months. My bosses, they were not very happy with me, obviously. But I thought it's just something I needed to do as much as, a lot of people complete their internships. I thought I can't miss out on the opportunity of securing articles. I might not get them again. Rob, as you know, that our industry is quite saturated at the moment, and at least it was back when I was still looking for articles. So I just thought I needed to definitely leave SA and explore this opportunity of articles. So I started articles at a small law firm in Parktown in Johannesburg, and it was for 2 years because articles in South Africa for 2 years. And yeah, I did other switches along my career.
Yeah, I noticed you did a year there and then firm. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. So a year after that, I just felt like I was just doing the same thing over and over again. I must tell you, Rob, that I'm the type of person that realizes that something might not work out for me, and I need to probably make a change now. Because a lot of people ask me, "Why did you change articles? Why didn't you just continue with that law firm?" I just felt like I was stuck in a particular um, area of the law, and I felt I wanted to be a multifaceted lawyer or an attorney. And if I did not leave that small law firm, I would not become that, or at least I wouldn't become that as soon as I wanted to become that. So I ceded my articles to another law firm in Bryanston. And geesh, I think I had the best time there ever. I definitely found that more suitable to my personality. I was doing family law one day, the next I was suing someone for rent. Every day was just a different experience. Whereas with my previous law firm, I was constantly in family law, which is great, but is not exactly who I wanted to be. Whereas with this new law firm, I was exploring family law. We had some criminal law. It was a whole bunch of areas that I'd never tapped into. And I think that molded me to become the attorney that I am today. And I'm glad I made that switch.
It's interesting, as again, some of our audience and some of the people that we work with over the course of the year are on the student side. And one of the things I have been asked a number of times is, what is the opinion of employers
Yep.
switching between your candidate attorneyship to different firms, and then also how that is that perceived? And I
Yep.
often say, look, it's whilst yes, you are there to learn and you're there to dig deep and you're in a traineeship effectively, if you're not getting on with the work that you're being given, or if you're not
Yep.
getting on with your principal, and there's a
Yep.
reason for it, or you're being shoved in a corner room and just get on with it, like that,
Yep.
these are the formative years of your career. So
Yep.
you should be brave enough. You know, enough's enough. I'm going to move on. I want a
Yeah.
better experience, and it sounds like you did that.
I did exactly that. It wasn't an easy decision, obviously, because I just thought it would definitely be perceived negatively when I eventually complete my articles and start looking for corporate law, because that's what I always knew I wanted to do. So even to explain that in job interviews is always such a tricky thing, right? Because a lot of people see that as you just giving up on something. You're the type of person that's not loyal to a particular firm, but that's not the case. I think that how I normally explain it is when I feel that I have definitely reached the ceiling in a particular area, I definitely want to explore greener pastures. Oh, but sometimes I also want to travel, the ungraveled road. And I think I was so glad when I made that decision. Because I think that had I actually stayed there, I might not be a corporate lawyer today. I might be a family law practitioner, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it definitely isn't the type of lawyer that I wanted to become. And a lot of candidate attorneys tend to just probably just are scared to make that kind of change. They're just comfortable with just let me just complete these 2 years and I'll figure it out after. Whereas with me, I kind of saw that if I stayed in this for 2 years, I would not become who I want to become. And I think that it's such a difficult decision. I'm not saying it's great for everyone. Some people see their articles and it doesn't work out. Luckily for me, it
Yeah.
did. And luckily for me, I had a great principal in the second law firm that I practiced at, and he literally took me through everything that I needed to become. And it's great when you're drafting your final papers to get admitted, to show the different types of law that you practice and the different areas you tapped into. It looked great on my papers, at least, and the judge was quite keen on probably just asking me what I went through. Why did I make that decision? And I explained in court, or at least my counsel did at the time, that these are the type of things that I wanted to experience, and I couldn't have done that with my first law firm, and that's why I went to the second law firm. And he actually appreciated that I realized that at such a young stage of my article clerkship. But it wasn't an easy journey, obviously, because you're in your second year of articles and now you're coming into this new law firm. And there's certain things that they expected me to know that I didn't, because I was stuck in just indexing and paginating or just drafting a letter of demand. I'd never drafted summons until I had got to my second law firm. And as a second year clerk, you know, I thought that I should be at that level, and I knew that had I just stayed at my first law firm, I'd probably only start drafting summons in my first year of being an associate or something like that. And I didn't want that. I wanted to experience that as a candidate attorney. And I'm glad I made that switch, because I then started working on my drafting, which is what I lacked really. Because with the first law firm, I was just always in court. Doing a Section 65 proceeding or rental dispute, which is great, but I wanted to focus more on my legal drafting, and my second law firm offered me that opportunity, which was exactly what I needed. And when I wanted to draft my papers to get admitted, it was such an easy process.
That's wonderful. And again, like I say, not that our particularly big part of our audience is on the student side, but for those of them listening, that it's really
very personal journey.
It's a very personal advice. I use the term advice loosely, but
Yep.
it is very much what it says to me is that you were brave even at a young
Yep.
age and at the beginning of your career, but you kind of had a gut feel that this is where I want to. This doesn't feel right, and it also goes to show the power of the rotations, because some smaller law won't rotate you at all. They'll just see you as
cheaper labour
that they can put in a specific department, and you won't learn. So it's very important that you did that. I mean, and that's great. And then you spent a few months there, and then you moved on to a firm called Clyde Bergman. Is that right?
Again, Rob, I took another chance again. I got admitted in 2016, and then a couple of months later, I thought, "Geesh, I need to get out of practice. I need to try something completely different." And I thought to myself, I wanted to do something that I haven't practiced before. At the time, I was thinking probably broadcasting law. So I was applying to places that might be practicing that kind of law. I was not finding anything. Then I saw a post for a commercial manager, I think at the time it was called, for an engineering consulting firm, and I thought, "Psh, why not? Let me just jump for it and do it." It was quite a junior role, so I thought I would learn quite a bit, and I wouldn't be expected to know a lot of things. So I knew that it would be a very great experience to learn and to grow, and to experience a different type of law. And I think when I went to my first interview, because I had no clue what this firm actually does, when I went to my first interview, we definitely went through a lot of engineering type contracts that I'd never even seen in my life before. And I remember just saying in that interview that I will learn, I will learn, I will learn. It can't be that difficult from ordinary contracts or bespoke
I'm going to
contracts.
read. I'm going to read. I'm going to read.
I'm going to read. I'm going to read up on it. I'm going to, because they were very, I think they were slightly concerned about my age at the time and my lack of experience. I think at the time they were looking for someone who has some FIDIC and NEC experience, and I had none. I was coming straight from practice. I just got admitted. So, definitely I've never seen a FIDIC contract in my life before. And then I think I just sat and I said to them, "Listen, I'll go through it, and I'll definitely come back in the second round of interviews and have more information on that." And that's exactly what I did. And I got the job. I think I got the job, from what I remember, I got the job because of my eagerness to learn. And a lot of people just came very experienced. And like I said, it was quite a junior role. So I think that's why I got the job.
That's not. I tell you what, that's not to be underestimated. So I mean,
No.
myself, people younger than myself coming out of university, I've worked.
Yep.
I've been there myself when I worked.
Yep.
I came out of university, and that level of eagerness to continue to grow and develop has been a mark of my personal career, but it's also something that I also ask other people. I never. I will say things to them like, just don't don't just sit still with your learning. Keep going,
Yep.
keep pushing. And
Yep.
sometimes that might be outside. You might have to leave my services to go and do that, but keep going, and then you know, to fulfill what's inside you. So that's great that you did that.
Yep.
And you're obviously again wonderful, because I'm getting this impression of you, this that you're really, you've got really strong convictions. You're ambitious, but you're realistic, and you know to push yourself, to put yourself into risky situations to get out of it what you want, which is wonderful. And it's great to see in a professional like yourself. I'm really, I'm really chuffed, really pleased.
Thank you, Rob.
Now,
And I also think the timing as well matters when you want to make that change or that switch in your career. You need to make sure that you've got the right time to do it. I mean, you don't want to just jump too early or jump too late. So a lot of it, I think about it a lot. I plan a lot. When do I want to change? I also, I look at what I've learned. And have I learned enough? Have I reached my ceiling? Should I jump to something more challenging? And you need to just make sure that your timing is right as well.
and then back end of 2018, before we'd even heard the word,
Yes,
you
moved to Hatch. And
please tell me
I
about
did.
who a Hatch are, what do they do, and what do you do for them?
Cool. So Hatch is an engineering consulting firm. We are very multifaceted. We work in mining. We work in a lot of roads, infrastructure. We do a lot of energy and power projects, as well as oil and gas. So we are a multifaceted engineering company, and I happen to be the legal counsel for the Africa and Europe and Middle East region. I'm based in Johannesburg, obviously, but Hatch has over probably 600 um, employees in South Africa, but globally we have over 9,000 employees, I believe. We have quite a lot of offices, about 150 offices, I think, in different countries. In South Africa alone, we have about 6 offices. So we're quite a big engineering consulting firm, and obviously I'm a bit biased, but I think one of the best. And I work a lot with our infrastructure and our mining and metals business units. I'll dabble in a bit of oil and gas from time to time, but my main focus is probably infrastructure, mining and metals, and just your ordinary claims and litigation stuff. I do a lot of litigation and a lot of claims in our legal department. We're quite a small legal department, funny enough. There's about 2 legal counsels, which is myself and the lady that I work for. But now we are shifting gears a bit because we have 2 departments where it's commercial and legal. We do similar things, but there's obviously some differences here and there. So right now we're actually getting into a shift where we are trying to see where we can collaborate and work together on contracts and claims and litigation. And that's essentially what I do from a day to day.
And then you say the commercial team are working closer together. Is this
Yep.
something, do you think, that's been in a while, or do you think this is part of what we're all seeing, which is post-pandemic departments and teams working together, better synergies? Do you think it's come out of that, or do you think it's something that
Well,
was in the
it's
pipeline?
definitely it's part of Hatch's manifesto to collaborate and to work together as teams. They encourage teamwork quite a bit. So it's definitely been something that's been in the pipeline. But I think with us all working from home, we realize that we definitely need to probably fast track the process a bit more and get ourselves working together even quicker. So Rob, I'm not seeing your video anymore.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Maybe, can you hear me?
Yeah, it just says it's been disabled due to internet quality issues.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, as long as you can still
But
hear me, we can carry on.
I can hear you. It's fine. I can carry on. So it's
Perfect.
definitely not because of the pandemic. I think it's always been in the pipeline. I just think that we've probably we fast tracked it because of the pandemic. There's probably a much bigger need for us to collaborate since we're all working from home and not from the office.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make there, because what we found here at GRM is that the need and the sort of, we've actioned it, where departments and teams are all working much more collaboratively, much more in relation to one another. And we've got I was actually going through earlier, with every duty that you go around the whole life cycle of a project, there's like a double arrow. I know you can't see me at the moment, but I'm drawing.
No, now I can.
Okay,
Now I
good.
can. Yeah.
And so it's not pointing just one way. It's not like someone has to give me, it disappears. Everyone has responsibilities to one another. So if this is something that's come from working from home, and if we come out of post-pandemic and everybody much more collaboratively, I for one will be a very happy man. And I think, you know, it sounds the same as your departments as well.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, the project teams ultimately are the ones that benefit when they see the legal and commercial teams working together, as well as the finance teams working together closely with the legal teams. The project teams, at the end of the day, eventually benefit more when we are all collaborating to assist them in making sure that the project is successful. Whereas when we're all working in isolation, we don't know who's doing what, who's focusing on what. And the project actually suffers, I think, in that case, because now the project manager is chasing after individuals, not sure who's doing what when. Whereas we're all collaborating, we're all on one page, we have a particular spreadsheet. I'm not saying this works for each and every company, but specifically ours, we have spreadsheets where we're all just putting in something of what we're doing for that week. We have input there for the project manager so they can see, okay, Mandisa is working on the contract this week. Next week, someone is dealing with the invoicing. It works. It helps the project team, and it certainly helps the client.
That's wonderful. Good to hear, because again, and it really is in relation to what I wanted to catch up with you on this podcast, which your thoughts at the beginning of the pandemic, which you kindly put into the 5 and 5, and then, you know, and now what we're seeing. But this all ties in quite nicely, because what you're saying, and I've seen it up myself, is it, again, just sorry to repeat myself, but is that better collaboration? It's almost communication. You know, it could have been so different. When everyone got sent home, suddenly everyone could have disappeared. But what it was, everyone started getting better tools, better communication. Everybody knows where each other are, and it seems to be working really well.
It does. I think, I mean, when I did the 5 and 5, we had just got into lockdown. I was still trying to adjust, and I think maybe from our answers as well, you'll pick up. I was trying to adjust to working from home. We were all feeling so isolated, obviously, and I think at the time my boss even said, you know, it would be nice to do a bi-weekly catch-up conversation just to see where your head is at, how far you are with your projects, and etc. And I think I received that quite negatively, because you automatically think I'm being micromanaged, right? Especially as a younger professional, you're thinking, oh, she's just checking up on me. She just wants to see that I'm doing my job. So I received it quite negatively. And I think after the third week of doing it, I realized how helpful it was, because I don't have that access to her in the off. I mean, sorry, from home. Whereas in the office, I could just pop into her office and ask her a quick question, which would guide me on how I need to interpret something in a contract. Whereas I'm sitting at home, I don't have that advantage. So I'd find myself probably working a bit longer on a contract than I would have if I was in the office, just because I don't have that bouncing off pad that I had in my boss, right? So initially, we all, I think it wasn't just the legal department, I think all of us, we were just struggling to just adjust and figure out how to work from home. Besides the technological aspect of it with Teams and Zoom and which platform is better than the other, I think just, you know, you would sit in a meeting and just try to figure out where's everybody's headspace at, and how far are we with a particular project. And people were just, I think that first probably 2 months or so, we were too worried about COVID to actually focus on work. And I think it took time for us to finally get it right. And I think probably 3 months into the lockdown is when we finally got into a system and a particular cycle which worked for us and our teams.
I think you're right there. I think point to make, and maybe something that some people forget, especially you know, of this podcast, we move on so rapidly at the moment that we forget that actually when lockdown started to happen on a global basis, so for us here in South Africa, it was obviously March, but there was a couple of months there where people were really in limbo. There was the first couple of months,
Yeah.
we really didn't know what we were doing, where we were supposed to be,
Yep.
again, I mean, and everything kind of just froze for a little bit. And
It did.
whilst, I quite enjoyed being on holiday,
Hmm.
there was a point where it's kind of, oh, we got to go back to work. We've got to make this work, and we've
Yep.
got to get things moving again. So it's interesting to hear that you kind of went through the same thing, where 3 months
Yep.
in, it's like, right. But it's really interesting to hear you talk about the better collaboration, the better communication that has sort of taken place at Hatch, uh, and how you've really made this work. And I guess it's probably instilled habits across teams working together that will stand for ever now. And I think
Yep.
certainly if I think about RM, the levels of communication between all of us and the different departments is so much better and clearer and concise, and it's producing great results. So if there's
Hmm.
anything that and I'm obviously loath and respectful to that a lot of people have had it a lot worse, but if we're ready to say that there was some good things that might come out of it this could well be one of them. I
Yep.
just wanted to touch. Sorry, go on. Yeah, there was a slight delay there.
No, I agree with you, Rob. Don't don't
Yeah.
stress. I agree
Yeah.
with you. Yep.
And in terms of, I looked through some of your answers, and for those who've not checked out your 5 and 5, I will be putting a link to it when we post the podcast as well, to make sure that
Hmm.
people can read some of your answers. You were very, like you said, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. We really we weren't sure. You sort of made mention that some have given you some good advice in terms of the actual pandemic, and whether there were claims that could be made and things like that.
Yep.
But one, reading through your answers again, and then again reading through a lot of other people's answers as well, was that you seemed to be very clear that technology would be adopted, and for good, which
Hmm.
obviously a lot of lawyers departments had been neglecting, is probably had been law was very slow to move into the
Yep.
world, but it had to speed up very quickly. And have you, I mean, again, part of this improvement in collaboration, teamwork, have you seen that from some of your external suppliers, and willingness to really jump into a Teams call and a Zoom call, and get things moving, and electronic
It,
signatures,
it
that kind of thing?
exactly. I think, Rob, like I said, and I probably might have mentioned this in my 5 in 5, is that um my main probably prediction, if we need to put it like that, was that technology is going to play a massive role in not only just Hatch but also our legal industry. And I think that the first bits we had to tackle was the electronic signature, right? um, and a lot of
Yeah.
people had to adjust to that, because normally they just pop by my desk, quickly sign a contract, we file it away. Now they had to actually get into DocuSign, and I mean, there's other platforms as well you can use to use your electronic signature. And I remember even doing an opinion for one of our HR advisors, just talking about um, possibly the legal validity of an electronic signature. Is it as valid as our normal signatures? we had all types of concerns when we started with the pandemic. I think with us, we definitely we have such we have a principle of wanting to be face to face and wanting to see each other all the time, and we have that human factor, right? And now when we had to work from home, it was like teams, and a lot of people, I think, initially when we started, were always on Teams calls. They needed that human interaction, and I think at the time I was just like, I don't want to interact. I want to jump into this pandemic. I want to be locked down. Like you said earlier, we were not even sure if we could just walk outside at some point. And I think I definitely got into that mentality. And luckily for me, our Hatch employees wanted to interact. They wanted to have those calls. And we figured out early that we needed to be, apologies, Rob, just someone's trying to call me on Teams.
Yeah,
So we
no problem.
realized
My
early
dad tried to
on.
call us earlier on FaceTime. I thought we won't just patch him in. He won't. my
Yes.
80-year-old father would be going, "What am I doing?
What are we
Um,
doing? Okay, so I think in terms of technology, Teams was a huge adjustment. I think we were also trying to figure out how to type into the chat room while being on a Teams call. I mean, it was a mess. It was a complete mess. People were figuring out videos and am I on screen? Can you guys see me? I think the biggest question was, sorry guys, I was on mute. That was like,
yeah,
it was crazy how it
and
all
taking yourself
started,
off mute when
and
you
taking
wanted to
yourself
ask a
off
question.
mute.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So we,
yeah.
we struggled a bit with that, but we adjusted, I think, towards July, August. Now everyone was now finally in the groove. But I think I might have mentioned it in my 5 and 5. My biggest concern at the time was how our court systems would work. And as you know, Rob, even before the pandemic, it was quite challenging. It was quite a mess. Our court system is nowhere near where it needs to be. So I
Yeah.
was quite concerned with how they are going to adapt now that we're all working from home. We had a few litigations that were happening at the time, and we were quite impacted by that, and I think we'll touch on that a bit later. But I'm glad now that our court systems have now gotten into the groove, and we're starting to see a lot more of our judges accepting the norm now, because they struggled, I think, more than anything. A lot of them just postponed matters rather than just hopping onto a Zoom or a Teams call.
I think we can jump onto this now because it brings me quite nicely, actually, to ask you some questions about the future for the legal market, specifically in South Africa, and
Yep.
maybe even the wider continent. But you allude there, definitely there's big backlogs at the courts, and every lawyer that I spoke to had real complaints of
Yep.
things just freezing up, and until obviously until the court system was ready to really hear the cases again, and things were being hugely delayed, and it was deeply frustrating. But I think my impression was that the South African legal system didn't handle it any worse than anyone else, but maybe not any better than anyone else either.
Yep.
And so that's okay. But
Hmm.
I know from our clients in Kenya that things went well. They immediately jumped onto virtual courts, which was a good thing, and then other African nations as well. But then some really just froze up and are still frozen now. So South
Mm.
Africa kind of sits in the middle. But that sort of the response, I think, and this is a conversation we have. I'll have to call you back another time to discuss,
Mm.
but because it's quite deep. But I get asked a lot and I get approached a lot by potential foreign investors.
Yep.
People looking to come to South Africa to invest in their business, whatever that business may be.
Mm.
But they know that my position, they know that I'm a foreigner who has invested in South Africa and has moved here. And a lot of it, they ask around the court system and how it handled the COVID, outbreak, and what are the problems? And my answer is typically it was kind of middle of the road. It would have learned, the system would have learned a lot. Should we go through something similar? But it has its problems like everywhere else. But it is, and then when we get, and I would be interested to get your view on this. One of the things that makes me very hopeful for the future of South Africa, and not just that, but the actual future of the legal market and the legal business market, which we know globally is almost $1 trillion worth of business, is that the rule of law is taken. It is the rule of law. South Africa, as a market and as a country, is that the law is the law, and people take it seriously. And if you've done something wrong, there might be a delay, but you're going to have to face, you're going to have to face the courts. And that's one of the things I talk to foreign investment a lot about. And do you see that yourself? You nodded your head there, which is good. I'm on the right path. But do you think, rather than just saying what do you think for the legal market in South Africa going forward, but that's obviously a big part of it, right? That the fact that they can trust the court system.
It is, Rob. I think probably when I was practicing, it wasn't as great as it is now. So there's been huge improvements in our court system and our courts and our court officials, right? We are getting, or at least we're hiring much better court officials. I think the pandemic definitely, it was probably not an easy adjustment in the beginning for our court systems, and certainly for our external law firms as well. I think they were all in a bit of a tiz when it first started. They thought they would lose clients. I mean, I remember a lot of our external firms just, double checking with us that, business is still going to continue, right? So we definitely saw a lot of shift in our court systems, and I think now how it's running, and I do believe that the pandemic will eventually stop or end. But I do think that this was a great way to just test the waters and see how technology can affect and definitely improve our court systems. I think at the time when I was doing the 5 and 5, I was just thinking, gee whiz, are they even going to figure out um how to even click on a Zoom button or a Teams button, and I think they've done pretty well. I think we are seeing, I mean, here and there, Rob, I must admit that I do think there's still improvement that's needed. I certainly think that, I mean, I think a few weeks ago we had an urgent application in a court, and the judge in that particular matter wanted to actually have a physical court hearing and did not want a virtual hearing. And we were all bewildered. We're like, how is that possible? We're in 2021. How are you not understanding that this can be done virtually? But I think the judge felt that the type of matter we had at the time, and probably even the confidentiality part of it, she felt it needed to be heard in court and not virtually. So we are still finding judges somehow finding ways to actually have a physical court hearing. They'll find all sorts of reasons why they they need to do this. I don't see it, but I understand that it's an adjustment for them, and it will take time for them to finally get into the habit of virtual hearings. I don't anticipate it will last forever, but I do think that it's a much swifter process. And I think, Rob, you might have the same from other lawyers. It's quick. We're in and out. We discuss the vital issues, and the call is done. Whereas if we're in court, we'd have a tea break, we'd have a lunch break, and we end up being in court the whole day. And unfortunately, for businesses such as ours, time is money. And if you're having 5 engineers sitting in a courtroom with the legal counsel like myself, and then advocates and attorneys, and we're all sitting in this courtroom for 3 or 4 days for a trial, our projects get affected, and ultimately our clients are getting impacted by this. So we definitely are enjoying this virtual hearing, because you have just me and probably our external counsel and the presiding officer, be it arbitrator or a judge, and that's it. We'll rope in that particular engineer when we need their testimony, and then we rope them out again. And it works seamlessly, at least for me. And I'm in and out of these things after 2 hours max, and I can get back to work. Whereas if I was still attending court, I'd be driving in traffic, coming back to the office, and I'm exhausted, and then the day's done. And a project can be affected by a legal counsel sitting in court the whole day, or sitting in or sitting in negotiations with the other party the whole day. So I think that, initially when we started, it was kind of very scary at the time, but now I think it works so seamlessly, and I wish we can continue.
It's such an interesting. It sounds so simple in terms of virtual hearings, but it is a
Yeah.
massive thing for South Africa. Now, look, I'm biased, right? I've moved here. I put my future here. I've moved my kids here. I've invested heavily in South Africa. I employ a lot of South Africans. So I'm about this wonderful country that I live in. And I
Yeah.
want it to be, and I want it to be the very best it can be, and I want to play a part in that. But I want the legal market here to be really lead on the African continent. I want to, and whilst South Africa's and the law firms have always been, 50 to 100 years, have always been incredibly well respected, as incredibly high level professionals. We're now moving into the business of law. We're now moving.
Yep.
The legal market being a multi-billion rand industry, and and obviously lots of foreign law firms looking to move in. I wrote an article back in 2017, and I projected that in 10 years' time, every single major law firm will have an office in Sandton. And you know what? They're slowing down. I mean, obviously, I can't mention any names on this call. Off camera, I can tell you a number of firms that are in the process of moving in, and it's coming back and coming back, and that's great. People say to me, "Why is that a good thing?" Was, "Oh, well, foreign direct investment is always good for the country. It gives our bright students who are leaving university more places to do articles, more places to work, possibly get." There's more companies looking to tie their Sandton office in with London and New York and Australia and Hong Kong. So everyone's becoming much more global, which is wonderful. So it gives the future of South Africa a great thing, great opportunities. So for me to hear the virtual courts and how perspective are used and seeing it, time is money, moving on, and the accuracy of it, and the fact that people can trust it is a wonderful thing. I don't know if that's
That's exactly what I find. And Rob, I like the point where you add about a lot of law firms moving into the Sandton area. Um, and I personally, I'm a huge fan of that, although Sandton traffic might be hell. I think one of our external law firms actually, we were chatting, and they were just saying how much, being in a certain area has not really yielded the results that they needed, because a lot of clients at least see a law firm in Sandton and they automatically respect it. And it's not a thing of we undermine other law firms that are in other areas such as Rosebank or Melrose or whatever the case may be. It's just that you normally just you think of your big law firms, and I don't want to mention the names. They're all sitting in Sandton, and if you see your law firm sitting there, I think you have this sense of I respect this law firm more. I want to work with them a little more, and obviously the access to the international platform. I'm not saying it can only come from Sandton, but I think as clients we tend to think, geez, if they're sitting in Sandton, it means they could have an office in London, they can have an office in Australia. And for our type of firms, engineering consulting firms, especially a global one such as Hedge, that's a very important aspect for us when we are picking an external law firm. We want to see, do they have global presence? Are they aware of global markets? Are they aware of different global trends, especially in the legal area? So just seeing a law firm that's only practicing in South Africa is not exactly ideal for us, and it's something that we pay attention to. And I'm glad that law firms are starting to adapt to businesses, whereas probably 15 years ago businesses had to adapt to the law firms, right? I think now law
Yeah.
firms are starting to realize that they need to adapt to businesses and be more business focused and business minded. And a lot of the chats that I have with some of the law firms that we work with is, how do you save me money? Like, I don't want to hop into litigation immediately, that's always the advice. Let's just take them to court. Now we're more focused on, how do we avoid litigation? How do we get what we want without entering a court? So a lot of settlement is the discussion nowadays. How do we settle this? What figures are we looking at? What's the ballpark figure? What would be commercially viable for Hatch to accept? And those are the type of conversations that we are now having with our external law firms. And we're not a very litigious firm, so we tend to want to align ourselves with law firms that understand the business that we are in and understand that every cent counts for us, and we're looking at firms that are able to adjust that into the legal advice that they give us.
That's really interesting, Mandy. And I think one of the things that I just picked up on there, really relevant to those who might be that are thinking about bringing their business here to South Africa or onto the continent, is that you talked about what you, from an in-house perspective. You're the client, you're the in-house perspective. Yep. You're a global firm, and you mentioned there from a supplier perspective. So,
yep,
listening to this, that wants, that has Hatch on their business development to-do list, they'll need to know what kind of language they need to speak. But at the same time, this is something that's really, really important, and something that I talk to firms about a lot, is don't go into a new market. Like, going, brilliant, it's the gateway to Africa. I need to be in Africa because that's where, that's the last continent that's going to make lots of money, and that's what people outside are thinking. And a lot of the times the conversations I have, they think they're immediately success because they have been a success elsewhere, and they're like, well, we'll come in, we need to be in South Africa because that's where we can have growth. And it's a lot of we, when they're actually not thinking about what is South Africa. Now you and you're the lady you work for, you would be potential client of new firm looking to enter the market. And it's important that they come in and look at, what does the market need from me? What is again, I've been lucky enough in my career to live all over the world, and I've obviously had to take my business into new markets, but I've also seen other law firms and other clients come into new markets. And 9 times out of 10, the mistake is always that they don't really pay attention to what the local market needs. Mm-hmm. I do this, I'm amazing, so that we'll get clients. And it doesn't always work like that. And I think it's a really important thing that you brought up there in what you were saying. And I think it's important for any listener to really think about, if they have an African strategy, and if South Africa is part of that, and ultimately if working with major corporations like Hatch, so potentially part of that, then they need to be thinking about, what does Hatch need? What does South Africa need? And and how can I be a part of that? And that tends to be the advice I give, anyone, and even more so than when GRM, when we're looking to enter new markets, not just mainly have a base there, but maybe to. It's the question is always, do they need us? How do they want us to work? How do you work in Egypt? Work in South Africa or Kenya, wherever it may be. And an angle, and I think that's kind of a lot of the future of the legal market here in SA for sure. And yeah, you touched on Santon there, because I certainly believe, whilst I think we again at GRM, we do a lot of good work with because I think we're very good at what we do and we work very, very hard. I would suggest, I think we probably had to work a bit harder because we're not in Santon, because we're not there.
Correct. And Rob, not to say that clients such as myself are specifically looking for Santon law firms. Definitely
No.
that's not the case. But I do think that there's an added advantage if you are in that area and even the surrounding areas such as your Melrose and your Rosebank. You are just so much more accessible to the likes of myself, working at Hatch and other engineering firms. We don't want to be traveling an hour to get to you. We want at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes drive. We're in and out of your offices and we're back at work. So there's an advantage in working in Santon. However, I'm not saying that all the law firms need to move there, but I'm just saying it's an added advantage. And just to go back to the point that you were making in terms of um, investors coming into South Africa, and you're quite correct, and you've hit it on the nail that they need to start adjusting their mentalities and looking at what can they offer us instead of what can we do for them. And I think that for me, when I'm looking for a law firm, I would love a firm that sticks to what they know and they're good at what they know, but also a firm that is focused on um, definitely focusing on my needs as a client and ensuring that they package whatever they give me for my particular needs and not giving me a generic thing that they'd give to an engineering firm and a technology firm, for instance. I want something that's specifically catered to Hatch. And a lot of these firms, what they do now, and I'm not sure if it's because of the pandemic, is that they go through our website. They pick out certain things, and um, I think with when we were adjusting into POPIA, which is the privacy law that just came into effect, a lot of them went through our website because we were looking for law firms that could assist us in complying, right? And a lot of them went through our website, our privacy statement, our website terms of use, our cookies policies, how we are protecting personal information. And when we're sitting in Teams calls with them, they'd say, "Yeah, no, listen, Hatch's privacy statement lacks this, that, and that." And for me, I found that impressive because you've taken time to actually learn more about your potential client, and it's definitely a tick in the box for me because I'm thinking I don't need to now take you through what Hatch is about. You've taken time to actually learn about Hatch, and that not only just reduces the amount of time I need to spend with you and how many hours you'll bill me for, but it's so impressive to see that you actually care about your client and you are actually taking time to understand your client and your client's needs. And it's not just about billing 2 hours. It's something you've taken time to understand your client. And I think that's very vital for me when I'm looking for an external law firm. Because at the end of the day, as an in-house counsel, I've been through that process, and there's certain things that I know I'm looking for in an attorney or a law firm, based on my experience as an in-house counsel. And I can tell you, engineers don't want to deal with us. The less they deal with us, the better. So they don't want to be sitting on Teams calls with attorneys going on and on and on and on and on. They want a client, or at least, sorry, they want a law firm that will break down the issues quickly, swiftly, and efficiently, of course, and we can then go back to business. So I'm glad that some of the law firms we were approaching for certain projects, such as Popia, was so good at learning more about Hatch and Hatch's business, and approached us in a particular way that they probably wouldn't approach any other type of company or firm.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly, I think, as well. And again, one of the things that I potential foreign investors here and firms that have moved into the market, one of the things I always say is I use my own example. I tell them, you know, you're gonna have if you want to get something out of South Africa, you've got to put something in.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be prepared to move. You've got to be prepared to live there. Like I said, look, I'm sitting here under Table Mountain. I've moved my family here.
Yeah.
The same thing when I spent 9 years living in Asia. You know,
Yeah.
before this, I moved there. Like I've
Yeah.
committed, and it's the
Yeah.
same. And it's the same with here. I think, you know, the days of firms, you know, sort of treating South Africa and Africa as a bit of a afterthought or places to get
Yep.
deals out and take the money back to London, they're over. They are
Yep.
over. You know, you've got to
Definitely.
put into.
Definitely.
There's a lot of bright students here. There's a lot of bright young workers and lawyers that want, you know, opportunities. So they need to move here. And but look, I'm gonna wrap up in a minute because I'm very
Yep.
conscious of your time and letting
Yes.
the good people at Hatch get you back. But I just wanted to end. Is there anything in terms of like I said, I'm very biased and I'm very buoyant on the future of the legal profession and the legal business market in South Africa. But is there anything, you know, you're still relatively young at the, you know, I think you're 5 years PQE, you're obviously clearly and wonderfully ambitious, which I love, you know,
Thank you.
but is there anything that you think jumps out at you about the immediate future of South Africa and being on the ground here as you are? What do you think
Yeah.
the direction's going to take, and what are the opportunities?
Oh, I'm very optimistic about where our legal industry is going in South Africa. I think we've definitely improved. And Rob, I don't know how long you've been in South Africa for, but from the time I was practicing to what's
5 years.
happening now, 5 years, yeah. So it's been such a huge change. Just in terms of the types of law we're doing. I think back when I was practicing, I mean, mergers and acquisitions was such um a scary idea, and definitely a lot of candidate attorneys and attorneys at the time had no clue on how to work in mergers and acquisitions. And I think now M&A seems to be I see it quite a lot with law firms now, that they offer that service now. um a lot of things that have changed for me as well is I'm seeing a lot of law firms do due diligences where they didn't back then, which is great for companies such as ourselves, because we constantly want to meet up with certain subcontractors, or we have a particular client that we may not be aware of or have a lot of knowledge on, and law firms are now offering that service. A lot of the law firms have also become very technological, which is great. So we're not seeing invoices being generated 60 days or 90 days later. It's much quicker now. I think I'm getting an invoice every 2 weeks now, and I'm quite impressed, overwhelmed, but impressed. And I think that our South African legal industry is growing in leaps and bounds. I think even the way we've taken on virtual hearings is quite impressive. I mean, it's not just the court hearings, but even our arbitrations and mediations are done virtually. And it's really, really impressive on how we've taken that on. I was quite concerned last year when we started, but I'm really impressed with how much work we've put into getting this right, and we've done it right. Um, I think we're definitely seeing, there's conversations between my colleagues and myself of how we feel like the legal industry is saturated, and I disagree. I think that, we're seeing a lot of candidate attorneys and attorneys tackling on different aspects of law, and not always doing just your normal criminal and family law, which is what we were taught to do a lot when we started. They want to do different things. They want to do your M&A, they want to do your aviation law, your broadcasting law, your telecommunications law. So I think our legal industry is giving young professionals a chance. We're also seeing a lot of young professionals opening up their own law firms and having sort of the ambition and the bravado to take that on is impressive. I think probably three of my colleagues have started their own law firms, which is impressive. So there's a lot of things that are
For them.
happening. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, Rob, you would know how difficult that process is to open up your own law firm,
Oh
and to
yes.
believe, yeah, to believe in opening up something for yourself, and also trusting that clients will actually come to you, right? So
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of change in our industry. of course, we're still quite far behind on a global perspective, but that's only because of the type of country that we are in, and the challenges we faced in the past. But I think I'm very optimistic of where we're going. I think a lot of law firms also want to sort of make sure that we don't spend a lot of time in court. And I think we don't want to inundate our courts anymore. They are finding innovative ways of reaching settlements. They are finding ways of making sure that there's less disputes. Our courts are even now offering a mediation phase before it goes to trial, which can actually iron out a lot of issues. And we can find ourselves facing less trials, which is ultimately what we all want. I definitely hate this idea that a lot of people have that, oh, a divorce takes 10 years in South Africa to get settled or finalized. I think now we have changed that narrative a bit, and we are moving into things being done in 3 weeks. We're getting dates a bit quicker, whether it's opposed or not opposed, we're getting the court dates much quicker now. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and I think a lot of improvement. And I really I want to commend our court system, and definitely our legal practitioners on the types of things they are doing to try and change the negative narrative that happens with our legal industry. Their opinions are even getting better. I mean, you no longer had to seek out a second opinion from a bank or an accountant when a lawyer is dealing with a financial type of topic. They're able to now apply their minds, and they're expanding their practices, and I'm quite proud of that. And I think I think in 10 years, Rob, we'll be having a conversation of how brilliant we've done over the past 10 years, and maybe the pandemic definitely was that springboard that we needed to get us in that direction.
I think you put that. I think yeah. I mean, you've wonderfully there. I think South Africa has always had that sort of reputation of being quite a litigious place, and
Yep.
get things into the court system and how we make our money. And actually, the legal
Yep.
system is changing and saying, no, we're deal makers. We're not going to necessarily go to court. Let's get the deal done. Let's get it done quicker. That change and shift in mindset is wonderful, not only for the practitioners and for clients like yourself, but also for the industry as a whole. It can only grow and can only be more exciting and attractive to other foreign entries and foreign law firms that want to come in here and go, look, they're skilled, they're excellent at their job, it's a deal-making country. That will really drive the economy here, so we can get through some of the other issues that we face on a social and economic perspective, which we're, as I keep trying to remind people, we're not the only ones down here in South Africa. Every country has its problems, and but I must say, Mandisa, and I'm not just saying this, I really, really, really mean it. With people like you in the legal market, it forward for the future, we only have a very bright future ahead of us. I really believe that.
You, Rob.
It's on.
Thank you.
So great to spend some time talking to you and get your insights as someone who's we've used the example of 10 years time. In 10 years time, you're going to be running the show, and I'm really, really
I hope so.
to see your journey. So
we'll
Mandisa,
be having a chat of how.
Go on.
Yeah, we'll be having a chat of how. Rob, remember we did that podcast 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Look at where I am now.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about my future, and I think I work for a firm that definitely provides opportunities for young professionals as myself. They've entrusted me with quite a lot of things, and I'm so happy that I made the change, and I'm here at Hatch, and I hope that I can definitely just grow and improve. And I'm excited about our South African legal industry. I'm excited about the law. I think you can tell. And I'm so glad you gave me this opportunity to just share my insights and my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Mandisa. You've given a nice shout out to Hatch as well.
Yep.
So I'm gonna say thank you very much. I'm gonna stop the recording, but thank you very much for your time, Mandisa, and hopefully we speak very soon.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you. Thank you. Cheers.